Now, there is one thing that I know to be true, and that is if you say anything, whether it's print, media, or audio, the words you say in the past will surely come back to bite you. Now, listen to this clip of Fat Joe and Angie Martinez embracing hip hop as if hip hop is their birthright. Now, according to them, people are simply bugging for not seeing the obvious truth. But in short order, I want to show you some print media where they acknowledge to some extent hip hop doesn't come from Latino or Puerto Rican culture. Now, I'm going to break it down from this interview that I found in a book by Raquel Rivera. Now, I'm sure they're both aware that they are speaking to an audience that includes more than just Latinos.
About because I've seen this conversation come up lately about Puerto Ricans and hip hop, right? Yeah. And I see Busta's been a very big advocate of you know what it is?
He's an advocate of truth.
Advocate of truth, but also making sure that the information is shared. Because people know
some people come. What you're alluding to is almost like a cancel culture, almost like Twitter is the home of hate. And so these are people that really don't know the history. Yeah. Or just come around and try to rewrite the history.
Yeah.
The history is the history.
Yeah.
It is what it is. If you look at that, shout out to Joe Conzo, Puerto Rican, who if it wasn't for him, none of the early pictures of hip-hop music or videos would have ever been captured. Like the Zulu Nation anniversary, everything that's legendary that started hip-hop, he's the guy who caught all the pictures of the Cold Crush, everybody, boom. And in all them pictures is half black and half Puerto Rican. Mm-hmm. There's just no way around it.
Yeah.
And
I think some reason some of that got lost is because it was so New York. And in New York, Black and Puerto Ricans, we grew up in the same neighborhoods and we grew up with same culture, same, so it wasn't strange to us living in New York and growing up in New York that we knew where the culture came from.
We knew we was going to be famous, so we was never going to
No, we didn't know none of that. I never realized there was a difference till I started when I got in the game, and then I would travel and I would go to different cities, and people would look at me like, "What are you doing here?" I'd be like, "What do you mean? What am I doing here? I belong here. What are you talking about?" But then I realized, there's a cultural difference, but it still does not negate the history of the culture and the history of how it started. Latinos and Blacks
created hip hop. If you go to Wild Style, the first hip hop movie, you will see the Cold Crush Brothers. Their DJ was Charlie Chase, Puerto Rican. And you'll go to the battle that they had with Romantic, which was the first Puerto Rican MC. Ruby D was in there with the fantastic Romantic. You cannot eliminate the Latinos' contribution to hip hop. When you talk about breakdancing, we talk about Rocksteady and Crazy Legs. When you talk about graffiti, it's every element of hip hop. It was 50-50, bro. If you look at the pictures, just go see the pictures. Yeah. You'll see it.
And why do you think? I mean, there's still a good bunch still riding off of the culture and still here and still present. But why do you think there's not more now?
There's more. The problem is, now we're talking about another subject. The subject is called colorism. So Fat Joe's the white Puerto Rican with green eyes, but you got Carmelo Anthony, you got Jim Jones, you got Fabulous, you got Lloyd Banks, you got Pop Smoke, you got AZ from Nas and AZ, you got everybody's Latino.
Let me introduce you guys to a book called New York Ricans from the Hip Hop Zone. This is a book written by Raquel Rivera. And why this book is important, because in this book, she has a list of interviews. And two of the persons that she interviews is Fat Joe and Angie Martinez. And they have some interesting things to say in this book. Let's start off with the question that the interviewer asked Fat Joe. It reads like this: would you say that there is a relationship between Puerto Rican culture, Latino culture, and hip hop culture? Now, think a minute. Can you imagine the interviewer asking, let's say, a person like Jay-Z, question, would you say that there's a relationship between Black American culture and hip hop? That would sound ridiculous, because it's already known that hip hop culture is an extension of Black American culture. So right there, the interviewer is questioning whether there's a connection. But of course, Fat Joe answers, definitely, Puerto Ricans have been a part of hip hop culture since day one. It started in the South Bronx, and most of the South Bronx is Latino. Yes, it's Latino now, but in the late 60s and 70s, it was mostly black or close to even. But nevertheless, let's go on. They were definitely parts of hip hop. They were definitely a part of hip hop since day one. They were break dancers, DJs, part of crews. Now listen to this sentence. I don't know where it turned into just black music. Now, I want to pause it right there because this statement reminded me of something Doggy Diamond said on his platform a few days ago in reference to Fat Joe's perspective on hip hop. Now, what Doggy Diamond released or revealed is that Fat Joe believes that early Puerto Rican hip hop artists didn't do a good job in representing Latinos in hip hop. Apparently, he believes that they didn't represent their race and heritage as proudly as they should. Now let's listen and watch this clip.
So you can see this. 75 years, represent 250 artists. So when you look up the artists, one of them that they represent, one of them is Fat Joe. Maestro Fresh Rest, what's good, bro? One of them, you can book Fat Joe through the site. One of them, you can book Fat Joe. Is this really Fat Joe's information? This is all his pictures. It's all connected to everything. It got a tour date for him. See, I guess they booked this tour for him in London, United Kingdom. See? The tour, a spot date in the United Kingdom, April 18th. See that? So, this is Fat Joe's bio. And we don't even have to read the whole bio. We could just go from the first paragraph. And it says, Joseph Antonio Carter Jr., known as Fat Joe, is one of rap's most influential artists. He was born and raised in the South Bronx area of New York City by parents of Puerto Rican and Cuban descent. Growing up, he was constantly influenced by his family's diverse passion for music and surroundings. Fat Joe found inspiration from his older brother and acclaimed fellow rappers Big Pun. So he should have corrected that, because how did you get inspiration from Big Pun when you predate Big Pun? Theodore, they're talking about Grand Wizard Theodore, Funky 4+1, and the Furious 5, who Raheem spoke about. Fat Joe explained, now this is the most important part. Fat Joe explained how powerfully impacted he was by expressing Latinos before us who had the opportunity to do it just didn't know how to do it. They came in trying to do this black music, waving flags, but we're trying to kick in the doors for other Latinos and represent our people, and it shows. Can we say that again? Fat Joe explained how powerfully impacted he was by expressing Latinos before us who had the opportunity, you see this? Latinos before us who had the opportunity to do it just didn't know how to do it. They came in trying to do this black music, waving flags, but we are trying to kick in doors for other Latinos and represent for our people, and it shows. So again, That's not my words. That's not my words. That's his words.
Doggy Diamonds did this.
Shout out to Doggy Diamond for that. Now, here's the deal. Could it be that Fat Joe is referencing people like Whipple Whip, Charlie Chase, and Ruby D? Is he trying to suggest that these dudes are responsible for why most people consider hip-hop Black American music and culture? Now, if my memory serves me correctly, isn't it Ruby D who said in his infamous rap lyrics, "I'm Ruby D and I'm a Puerto Rican, but you might think I'm Black by the way I'm speaking"? Does Fat Joe consider people like Ruby D a failure in Latino representation? Only Fat Joe can flush that out. I also thought it might have something to do with this conspiracy theory, this belief among some Latinos that Black Americans and those white individuals in the music industry is preventing Latinos in hip hop from getting their shine. Now, let me play a clip, give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let me play a clip from, you guys might have seen this, King Tone. He did a video some months back, and he's making this allegation that Black Americans are holding Latinos back in hip hop.
It was a multicultural between the Latino and Black finding out how to replace their anger with dancing, music, and rapping. And as we mixed our women in the Caribbeans, we mixed our styles in the ghetto. That shit is 50-50, 100%, nothing less.
Why do you think that the narrative is being pushed to lower the contributions of Puerto Ricans in hip hop?
I don't think it's made purposely to lower the contributions of the Latino. It's made to keep in check the contributions of the Latino. Like it was made to keep in check when the Rick Barrys and when we started singing our songs and bringing rock and roll, when we stole it from Elvis, right? We're supposed to have stole these things from them. But really, they were stealing it from our cultures. We played the drums in Cuba. We got that shit rocking. And slave ships dropped off there and mixed with our Latinos and Puerto Ricans. So we've been mixing records with you since we've been taking you, because we seen you were Black like us, you were brown like us. We didn't understand why you were shackled. And the Guanabana and the great Indians of the Caribbean start freeing the slaves. Then we start eating and mixing our culture. So now you want to say in the Bronx, you wasn't eating rice and beans and mixing it with us, eating sofrito and fucking making rap music in Puerto Rican houses, dancing with our women. Now it's one culture rap. Get the fuck out of here. You must be blind and stupid if you think somebody's going to believe that, who lived in that time, who had open eyes. Now what happens is, when someone gets the piece of the pie, right? So the Jews and the American dollar had to confess and let us into this music industry. So then they let a Black and a white guy share the wealth. So then once we got the wealth, what we do, we duplicate the behaviors of our oppressor. So then once the conglomerate became Black powered, it was hard for Latinos to make it through, because if you let one in, you're taking one out, right? If you got a new number one, that means you knocked out a number one. But if you 1 through 10 are all Black, then you only see that replacing each other. So when whites seen rock and roll and all his music in the top 10 be challenged by the Black, they won their space, they secured that piece of the pie. Ain't nobody sharing pie in America. Who the fuck lied to you? You gotta steal it from grandma's window and eat it while it's hot. So what I'm saying, they ain't gonna share the piece of the pie. They don't wanna, if they give you if they tribute you and they give you that right, then that means you got the right to claim that profession since it started. So that means our Latino people who've been out in years, they should be out there talking like KRS-One about how they started hip hop, how Latinos were in the beginning and the forefront, how they are the pioneers, using the same words without judgment on the other side as you did, because it was 50-50. Anyone claiming it just wants to be a supremacist of a superior race doing something that happened in unison between cultural people. Yes, they have gotten better in the pie and got most of it, but it isn't what because they started it. We were baking that pie with them, and it was 50-50. So anybody who gives Joe slack for that, they can start giving me slack for it too.
Now, if you're like me, you're probably wondering, what does this movie, The 688, have anything to do with hip hop? For most normal people, it has nothing to do with it. But for Dr. Cologne, it has everything to do with it. How is that possible? Well, he believes, like King Tone, that it's possible that there are Puerto Rican pioneers in the early 70s that we simply just don't know about. He alleges that Black Americans are hiding them. It's not telling the full story of hip hop. This is why they can't find them. So, in his genius, he decides to use this movie as an example. So he points out the fact that the movie is represented, it seems to represent a female Black American battalion, right? He found out that that is not totally true. There are Puerto Ricans as part of this battalion as well. He alleges that Tyler Perry knowingly hid that fact from the public because he wanted to present this as an African American battalion. Now, you guys remember that the train scene, if you've seen the movie, on the train scene, there was an Afro-Mexican woman represented. And she was told initially to go with the white soldiers, and she said, no, I'm Afro-Mexican. I'm going to stay with the sisters. Clearly, Tyler Perry felt a need to mention that to show that there were Mexican or Latinas in the freaking movie. But that wasn't good enough for Cologne. The fact that Tyler Perry didn't say Puerto Ricans, he had a problem with it. So he alleged that this must be a pattern with Black Americans. So it must be possible, according to him, that there are pioneers of Puerto Rican descent that we simply don't know about. And Black Americans are hiding them. And he uses this movie as proof of that. How deranged is that? Now let's go back to that particular interview. All right, I'm gonna pick up where I left off, where he says, I don't know where it turned into just a black music. It goes on, it says, I was so confused on how so many Latinos love hip hop, but weren't in the forefront, got lost somewhere. I don't know where and how that happened with me saying, or with me trying to become a rapper at 9 years old. I had to fill in the void. I wanted to fill in the void. Just like all the Morenos, see? Just like all the Morenos see their favorite rappers there, people they can relate to. I want to, in my videos with all the Latinos, you have to forgive me because the way he speaks, she's clearly printing it the way he speaks. So forgive me if I stumble. I'm trying to speak proper English and I'm trying to, read this. Okay. So all the Julios and all the Jose's see something they can relate to. Boricuas and Latinos definitely played a major part in hip hop's music. And the Dominicans now very much so. I don't know about that statement. Dominicans now very much so. But nevertheless, let's move on. He says, the questioner says, so you say you started rapping about 9 years ago, But your involvement with hip hop, like being a part of it and listening to it, when did that start? Then he says, since a baby, since I was 9, 10 years old, I would stay up all night writing raps, and my mother and father would tell me, listen to this, I'm trying to be a Negro, trying to be a Moreno, that I better pay attention in school, that it's just a dream. It'll never happen. My parents are very old-fashioned. My father's Cuban, my mother is Puerto Rican. My father's really old-fashioned, so he didn't understand me into this music right here. But now he supports it. He's the father of Fat Joe, and you can't tell him or can't tell nobody nothing. This is what he says then. Now, his mother and father was telling him, this is a black thing. Why are you trying to be a N-word? This is a black thing. So clearly, his parents don't think it's part of Puerto Rican or Cuban culture. If they did, they would be supporting him from day one, but they didn't. Now let me move on to another section in the book. This features an interview with Angie Martinez. So I'm not going to go through the whole interview. I just want to focus on one part of it, and that's on the far right of the page, where the questioner is asking, do you see hip-hop culture and Latino culture as being related somehow? And she says, of course. Then the questioner says, well, how so? Then she says, it depends on whose life you're talking about. Why should it depend on whose life? So that means that for many Latinos, hip hop is not a part of their culture. All right? But that wouldn't necessarily be what Black Americans would attest to. We may not every Black American may not like hip hop, but we will never acknowledge and say, oh, it's not part of our culture. But clearly, Angie Martinez is saying, well, it depends who you're talking about. She says, in my life, absolutely. I come from a Latino family, but I was raised in New York. I was raised within hip hop music. So both of those things have been a big influence on who I am and the music that I make. I think it goes the same for a lot of different people, especially second and third generations who grew up in New York. Now think about this. They ain't talking about Black Americans. We're 10, 12, 15 generations in New York. And I'm talking about, if you think about slavery in New York, there were slaves in New York as well. Okay? So, and there's indigenous people. I know there's going to be indigenous people who say, hey, we were there too. But the point I'm making, when she says second, third generations, she's not talking about Black Americans. Let me read that again so you hear what I'm saying. I think it goes the same for a lot of different people, especially second and third generation who grew up in New York, who grew up in the streets. We relate to hip hop and its expressions, but at the same time, our family, our parents, and our blood is Latino, so that'll never go away. So she's saying, yeah, we like hip hop, but hey, we're Latino. So she's making a separation here. See, Black Americans aren't going to make that separation. Whether we like it or not, we will acknowledge hip hop as being a part of Black American culture. So they're telling you that hip hop is really not a part of their culture. They adapted, they assimilated into Black American culture. You know what gets me after all this time? The level of stupidity coming from certain Latinos. The idea they have no concept of what culture is, what acculturation is, what's assimilation, and what's appropriation. They clearly miss social studies classes at school. The idea that they could claim a culture that we can clearly see where it derived from. The language of hip hop is AAVE. Some would call it Ebonics. It's Black American English. In order to communicate within a culture, everyone has to agree in terms of what the language should be. And we all decided, and this has been scientifically proven, that it's Black American vernacular that is used in hip hop language. That tells you everything you need to know of where this culture comes from. All right? That tells you everything, the culture and the music. All right. So, but you have a lot of people try to minimize the importance of that by saying it all comes from the street. Listen, the street does not have culture by itself. People make culture, not bricks and mortar. So this whole notion of saying that it's street culture is just a mere attempt to diminish Black Americans' role in creating and being the foundation of this culture that we call hip hop. Now, if you haven't already, thumb up the video, share, and subscribe. So until the next time, peace.
Hello, my name is Marie Van Britten Brown. I am an African-American inventor, known for revolutionizing home security. I invented one of the first home security systems, patented in 1966, which consisted of a camera and monitor to see visitors, and a two-way communication system for speaking with them without opening the door. Besides my home security system, I also invented several other devices related to healthcare and home security. For example, I invented an early version of the closed-circuit television (CCTV) system, which allowed hospital patients to be monitored remotely. I also developed a system for remotely controlling door locks, making it easier and more convenient for people to secure their homes. Despite facing racial barriers, I persevered and made a lasting impact on the field of home security, paving the way for future inventors and making our homes and communities safer. I am proud of my achievements and grateful for the chance to use my creativity to make a difference.